So 7.38 actually came a few days ago, and warding actually feels so weird. To be honest, they removed many cliffs. There are not really that many cliffs right now in the game, and as Dota players, we're pretty used to actually place wards in uphills, right? So in this video, what we're going to do is we're going to actually talk about ward placement in the mid lane, in the laning stage, and of course in every single game, and of course in the late game. Let's not waste any more time and go.
Down side to side like a roller coaster.
So the first thing that you do is usually you smoke, right? And what you usually want to do with your team is go and contest it, do bounty runes, right? So you can either smoke, and usually this is what you usually do. You go and you penetrate the enemy jungle, okay? So what you want to do in the beginning is you will either place a ward here, okay? And there is a reason for that, okay? Because you want to have access to what's going on behind. And most importantly, the enemy support is going to place an observer here, right? And do you see, like, it's so hard to block camps right now. So by placing the sentry here, what you actually accomplish is that it's so hard for you to actually deward because you're going to waste a lot of time to deward. But at the same time, this ward actually takes care if you place any observer here. So you really don't want to place an observer here unless you are some kind of a hook pods afraid, okay? This doesn't really make a lot of sense in English, but hopefully you did understand. So having a ward here, it's really important. Also, you can place it on this path over here. Why? Because it might expect you to wait here, you know. So you really want to have a proactive ward. Okay, so the first warding that you want to do is here. And of course, the equivalent of that is walk up this here and place it over here again. The second thing that we really want to talk about is the mid lane. The mid lane, if you have checked, it feels so narrow, okay? And why is this the problem? The problem is that if you place two sentry, one here and one here, it's almost impossible for you to hide any observer. So the only word I found that's pretty nice is actually the pretty old classic this word. Okay, this word actually will allow you to watch enemy high ground, which is pretty much what you want in the first minutes of the mid lane, right? And at the same time, it's really hard to deward because no one really expects you to place such a defensive ward. But wherever you actually hide it, you can't really make the most of it, you know? Maybe if you just place, you know, with a smoke with your team, of course, and you place some sneaky observer over here. But again, if enemy team wants to reward your observer in the mid lane, it's impossible. I've seen some warding, something like this here, but I really don't like this. I feel like these are some rune wards, but you don't really have access to the enemy high ground. So in reality, to mess up with the aggro all the time, okay? This is a fine ward, but definitely this is not a good ward in the beginning of the laning stage as a mid laner, okay? Now, a small tip as a mid laner, you can buy two sentries, and again, you can place one here, you can place one here. You can do that around 3-4 minutes in where you have enough gold and you want to deal ward, okay? Now, when it comes to the laning stage, this is a good ward as we said here, and of course, this is a good here to see the bounty runes in the beginning. But what are good wards in the laning stage? There are two wards. If you're here, you can place the old classic ward, lane ward here. Why? Because to be honest, look at this. If they place one sentry here, it's almost impossible to actually hide any observer in the laning stage that's going to have impact. Makes sense? Like, where am I going to place an observer? Doesn't really make a lot of sense, you know. Of course, if you want to snipe couriers, you can just place it there. But this is the only observer that's going to help you to have a lot of impact, okay? And of course, the equivalent of that is having an observer here. There is a bonus tip if you're Radiant. This one allows you to see slightly here also if you place it well. Whereas here, you don't really have access here. You have to place it like over here. So you're going to have access over here, but it's not really going to be that great. I feel like Radiant had a slight advantage. Okay, now we go into the mid game, and I feel like this is like the most tricky part, right? Laning stage is pretty simple. You want one for the boundary runes, you want one for the lane. The mid lane is fairly simple. There's not much here, to be honest, for now. Actually, just a side advice, like side tip, right? You can place one here, right? If you place it here, you can see like slightly here if you select the high ground, right? Maybe you can potentially see here. But again, these are like wards that you want to perhaps like place if you're really hunk and constantly just enemy support just deward you like throughout your games and you have some kind of pattern that you realize it. Okay, but we're gonna start with the Radiant right now, and I really want to like mention something. The most classic ward is here. Okay, I've seen that in all of my games there is a ward here, but I really don't like it. To be honest, why don't I like this? Because it's so obvious. There is only one uphill in the entire jungle, and where else should we put the ward? So if you place a ward here as a sentry, right? Do you see like the distance on that? There you go. This is not the way to go. So in fact, what you want to do is be slightly smarter and place the observer here. Why here, or even better here? Because you have access, let me like show you, you have access to this camp here and at the same time here, and it's really hard to deward, as you see, right? So you have some pretty decent vision on who's farming some camps. Another cool thing that I actually realized is that the water has actually uphill. So what does this mean? This means that all of a sudden I don't see. So having a ward just like here, or even better here, right? I can again have access to who is farming, right? This is a type of warding that you want right now. So you can say that this type of wards are kind of lane wards, but in reality you need information, because the most unexplored side of the map is this new map. I tell you, I've played over 50 games in the last like couple of days, and I realized that nobody wards in reality. Okay, so the wards that you want is here, here, and of course you can place an observer here. In reality, you want to have some high ground vision. This is not high ground in a sense of uphill, right? But it's as good as it can get. You need information to see who is farming these new camps, right? When it comes to this side of the map, I would say there is not really that many things that's important. I mean, like, this is actually aggressive farm over there, so warding there doesn't really make sense. And of course, here with the outpost in the gate, I feel like this is kind of a dead zone and people don't really play around that. You should play here 15 minutes in where Tormentor actually spawns, but other than that, you should not actually ward here. Mainly because nobody actually plays in this side of the map. Rose and Pit is in the middle of the lane, right? So you don't really have any struggle with that. Now, what I want to say is that this ward is also pretty classic, right? If you want to snipe the enemy wisdom, but at the same time, I feel like if you place a ward here, this is not a good ward. It's pretty dewardable, because what players are going to do, they're going to place a sentry here, they're going to bring the courier or something like that, and they're going to deward. As a result, you want an observer here, right, to see what the camps are doing. So if you want to place an aggressive ward, let's say you are dire and you want to place an aggressive ward, you want to see here, you want to place a ward here, or if you like are really like brave, you want to place it here just to see also who is tipping, something like this. Okay, you really don't want to place wards here. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. All the warding in 7.38 is about the camps that you farm, because you don't really have any mountains, any uphills, you can call it whatever. You don't really have this type of warding anymore. Now, I really want to say some things about Triangle. Triangle right now kinda sucks. It's fairly easy to penetrate, because before you had a vision here, some mountain, some uphill here, and some uphill here. It felt impossible, right? It felt actually impossible to penetrate it, okay? So if I want to actually, protect it, I'm gonna have one here, and I'm going to have one here. And it feels impossible to hide the ward. So the best one that you want to do is in reality this one, which is like really hard, but at least gives me some kind of information. This specifically for Radiant, right? And I'm going to go to the bot side of the map to show you. Now, going here again, you really don't want a ward here. As we said, if you place a ward here, you don't want it. So what most supports are going to do, especially in the low ranks, they're going to place a sentry. So what you're going to do, because you're, you watch this channel and you're really smart, you're going to deward that. You're going to place a sentry here just to see the limit of the camp, right? And what you're going to do is you're going to place a ward outside of this perimeter, okay? Otherwise, you might have your observer ward deward like fairly easy, okay? To give you an example, we place a sentry here just to give you like a demonstration. So a really good ward would be here, makes sense? So I'm going to have access. Now, also it's really hard to have an observer here. You really want an observer here, but you can't, because again, the support are going to place double sentry here, and it feels impossible to hide anything, right? But again, what do they lack? They lack this type of warding. Look at this. This warding, this waterfall, is also type of a high ground. So if I go down here, I don't see, or maybe I see because I placed a ward. Let's destroy that and see that really fast. Okay. Anyways, I don't really get to see anything here. So what we want to do is place an observer here. It's also going to give us vision on who's farming this camp, and of course it's going to give information who's passing the lane. And of course the equivalent of all these words here is this one here. Okay. It's all about the information inside the river. You can have words here, but I really don't like this type of word. I feel like it's too deep, and at the same time it's just one camp. I feel like the wording should be here and should be here. Okay. In the waterfalls, this is where the wording you want to be, inside the waterfalls. Okay, otherwise it feels awkward. Okay, so again, no vision here. I want to see who's farming the camp. You can place one word here, and also you scout who's coming from these paths. Another really nice word I realize I really like, to be honest, is this one. Okay, this one feels pretty nice. Okay, this one feels pretty nice. Why? Because I have access to who is farming this area, and at the same time it's pretty nice if I'm going to gank this lane. Okay, I found this lane to be pretty nice. Also, item quelling. If I cut this one, okay, I have some pretty good vision here. Okay, pretty good vision. Of course, you have to cut more trees here, but it's not worth it. But if you cut just one tree, let's say you have some kind of melee hero, you can just aid it with a tango. That's also pretty nice. Once again, you don't really want to have an observer here, but specifically if you want to talk about Radiant versus Dire, you can place an observer here on 15-minute mark. Okay, it's really important to have an observer there. You can do it because if you're in a higher MMR rank, people do contest the outpost Tormentors. They do contest the Tormentors early on, so you can have an observer, let's say around 40 minutes in, right, to see if they're gonna come, right, and maybe you can just snipe it, or maybe you can just take a fight there. Here, again, on the lane, there is not much to do. You can have like some observer here, as we said, but it's not as good as this one because it doesn't get to go that deep. Now, I really want to talk a little bit about the triangle in the Dire. The triangle in the Dire is way different in the Radiant because look at this. You want one sentry here and two sentries here to, let's say, quote unquote, two sentries here to actually protect all the triangle. But in reality, you need usually a third one here, right? So people, even myself, sometimes maybe lack of sentries, lack of gold, you're just getting bored. You're like, okay, it. My core doesn't deserve it, you know? They don't really get to place this sentry here. As a result, words like this one and words like this word and words like this one can actually be pretty nice, and it's pretty likely something like this might, 4 or 5 minutes in, or just one successful gank, it's gonna work out, and this one is probably gonna get the full duration. Also, the equivalent of these words here, you really don't want to place an observer here. You really don't want to place an observer here. But what's a cool thing here, and I really like it, right? You can place some kind of observers. Look at this. Here, if they're messy, you can place it here, right? And it's like on the edge, right? You can like on the edge. I don't know if it's spotted, but at least it used to be the case in the map before in 7.37. And here, of course, you want to have an observer here. Okay, come on, there we go. Here, why is this a good observer? I can get to see who is farming over there, and I can get to see the wisdom. That's the important thing, information. And these are some really deep words. I really want to mention though that nobody really plays in this side of the map, but if you're some kind of bounty hunter, if you're some kind of spirit breaker, if you're some kind of Nyx assassin and you get to play with some kind of global presence with Dawnbreaker or Spec, or definitely this type of word is what's going to win you the game. So summing up, you really don't have uphills right now, right? What you're going to do is play around the new farming camps and usually place the observers into the waterfalls, right? You really want to place observers that's going to see who is going to farm in the mid game. And most players in reality, look at this, they play in this area over here and they play in this area. So this is where warding should be focused. you really don't want to mess up here because it's a new patch, people are fighting, and of course I feel like warding right now is also being forgotten. Now, also one last tip is that, I don't know if you have noticed, but there are so many watchers and people really, I don't know, they're just getting bored actually claiming these watchers, but in reality it gives so many information. There are literally watchers everywhere in the game right now. So my piece of advice would be to always capture watchers, like especially like if you see here in this kind of triangle, or I don't even know how to say that, right? There are like watchers everywhere, and you should just take them and you should just make sure that you're gonna use them as vision. So I really want to add a couple more observers before we close this video. I think I saw that in one of the NOOB streams that I found really interesting. He could place a ward behind the Roshan pit or in front of the Roshan pit, and in the beginning I thought it was about actually Roshan, but it's not. It actually gives you some really good information. If you see especially this ward over here, it gives you some really good information about overall who's passing the river, right? And once again, it's all about the river. So you can place some pretty cool observers overall behind the Roshan pit. That's going to give you even more information about the game and about where enemies are going to do rotations. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Again, observers upon the waterfalls, try to place the vision away from the classic spots because somebody's going to instantly deward it, and instead you want to like place it somewhere like slightly more smart. GG Raza, and I'll see you on the next video. Hey guys, real quick, if you did like this video, make sure you subscribe, like and comment, as it motivates us a lot to keep making these videos and these guides. And of course, make sure you check out our 6-month coaching program. It's almost guaranteed. That's gonna get you to the next metal, if not metals. The link is gonna be down in the descriptions. Make sure you click it and apply right now.